Sorry. All right, so there we go. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Hold on. Sorry, there's so many alerts popping. I'm sure you can hear them because people are still coming in. So give me 1 second. All right, here we go. This should work better. So give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. All right. Sorry, there's a lot of moving that I have to do on my screens here. And I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow. Can everybody see that? Thumbs up.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Emily. You only see the presentation, right? You don't see anything else because I have a lot of windows.
Correct.
All right. Just want to make sure. All right. Well, welcome again, everyone. For those of you that are just joining, my name is Lupe Roque. I go by Lupe, so please feel free to call me Lupe. Today, I'm going to be focusing on how you can become a preschool teacher. And there's lots of various ways to do that. I'm going to focus on particularly what are the minimum requirements, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what are other options. But here is, oh, it happened again. Sorry, guys. You don't see my screen anymore, right?
No.
All right. It's in live. Here we go again. Let's try one more time. Now you should see it again. I'm in the presenter view here. Okay, I'm going to minimize that. And as we go through the presentation, if you do have any questions, I'm okay with you either unmuting yourself or putting questions on the chat. Emily will actually help me monitor that. So feel free to just check in. At the end, there will be another opportunity for you to have, ask additional questions, comments. So if you are not ready to ask the questions, write them down and we'll go through with that. All right. So I have an agenda here. Again, the first thing I'll talk about will be the education component and what courses you are required to take or what courses you need in order to pursue this field of early childhood. Then we'll look a little bit about what go into the experience, which here on campus, and that's how we connect to the bigger picture here with our lab school. We do have a practicum class that's offered here, which is basically field experience, but we'll also talk about how you can obtain additional teaching experience if you do not take the class here. And then the third thing we'll talk about is we'll look briefly at the child development matrix. The reason why I say briefly is because there is another presentation, right, Emily? Focus on this topic. And permits, if I'm not mistaken. I saw that.
Yes, we do have one.
Okay, so I don't want to give you another presentation on that. And lastly, again, we'll have a moment for questions and answers. Does anyone have any questions so far? No? All right. So let's go ahead and continue. Okay, so I have some question. I have an image here that I think is a wonderful picture of a group of children working with the teacher. And as you look closely, I want you to think a little bit of why are you here? What has led you to even join, today's meeting? And ultimately, why should someone or yourself join the early childhood education field? So I'm going to give you a couple seconds to just ponder on that question. And then hopefully some of you will be brave enough to share your ideas and your thoughts. So why are you joining the field of early childhood education? Why should we join? Anything along the lines of that. All right, would anybody like to share? Florecita, I see you raise your hand. Go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I decided to get an ECE degree because I have 4 children. I learned about Head Start through my first child. I started engaging in the parent committees and learning more about the program. The parent coordinator, when I would attend the committee, pushed me actually to get a degree, just in general, whatever I wanted to do. And then since I attended a lot of the Head Start program and I learned more about it, and I also went to LACO, I understood, and also through the Rio Hondo College's classes, which is the Child Development 106, I learned that the first years of children, education is really critical and important for us as parents and for teachers to teach them to become and learn skills. So it's very important. So as a parent and now as as a future teacher, I feel that we should join it because we make a difference in their life.
Very well said, Florecita, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, very well said. I think you nailed it. You have two different perspectives, right? You have the parent perspective and, you know, the old saying, children don't come with a manual, right? So there's a lot of learning that happens as a parent too, especially new parents. But then the other component, right? You've learned a lot about the first 5 years of life and how critical it is for growth and development, especially brain development. So yes, thank you, Florecita. Would anyone else like to share? Anyone? No one? All right. I'll give you my perspective and the reason why I joined the field. So I know that teaching is a very noble profession, and there's a lot that happens when you're in this profession, right? There's you're building relationships. You're not only teaching children, right, and sharing knowledge with them, but really there's more of that, the human connection, right? And just like Florecita said, understanding the development, just like she learned in 106 and other child development courses, it's really about understanding how critical our role is, right, in the early years to really make a difference in the life of a child. Additional reasons why it's a good idea to join early childhood education, or why it's important, is because I strongly believe that we as educators are also lifelong learners. And that's why we are back here in this, you know, in this profession. We continue with professional development, we continue with workshops and so on to gain more information and more knowledge. You definitely have to have a passion for teaching, and that goes along the lines of not only being the person, right, that's giving all the information and sharing the knowledge, but rather, again, I go back to the core part of it, which reminds me of Erik Erikson's trust versus mistrust, and that's building connections, right, and building that relationship with children. Just like Florecita mentioned, it's really about understanding the growth and development, but really supporting that and doing it from a very intentional standpoint, right, and understanding the theories and how to translate theories into practice in your everyday. And then what I really truly enjoy about early childhood is that it's very different from your K through 12 education. There's lots of liberty in our field. Curriculum is not necessarily prescribed like we have in K through 12. So we have lots of freedom, right? Educational freedom. I like to think of it that way. Once you do continue with your education, there's lots of different positions within the field. I myself have been in the field of education for the last 20 years. And within that time frame, I've held every position you can think of, anything from being an associate teacher, a teacher, a program manager, where I managed 8 schools at one time. I'm a coordinator here. I am also an adjunct faculty. I teach both at Cerritos College and Cal State LA. So there's lots of different ways that you can go about it once you have, you know, your degrees and your education. And I think for me, the most important one is that once you understand the importance of being in our field, you also become an advocate, right? And what does that mean? What does that look like? It just means that you are going to push to make sure that children, you know, continue to have their rights, that we are advocating for them at every level, whether it's at, you know, our community college level or even at the higher levels, you know, when policies are being implemented. So any questions about this? Any questions about anything I've said so far? All right, we'll move on. Here I have a question for you. What ages are considered preschool? So when you think I want to be a preschool teacher, what age group are you thinking of working with? Anyone?
3 to 5.
3 to 5, okay. It's definitely preschool. Anyone else? No. All right. Well, yes, 3 to 5 falls under that umbrella. And actually, to your surprise, I hope, or not. Children as young as 2 years old are considered preschool children. So here at our lab school, our license is for us to serve children from 2 years old to 5 years old, or entry to first grade now. Kinder, I'm sorry. So with that said, children, in preschool, if you're a teacher, you can have 2-year-olds. And there are other program types, such as an infant and toddler components or programs that are offered for families. So just so you know, that all falls under the umbrella of early childhood education as well. Okay, so this is where we get into the nitty-gritty part of it. As far as the education required, I want you to think of what classes you need to take, right? And this first slide here goes over the 4 courses that are considered your 12 units, which are core courses in our field. For us here in early childhood and preschool teachers, you need to take 4 classes, which is CD 110, which looks at the principles and practices of early childhood education. This one's 3 units. Then you need to take CD 106, which Florecita mentioned she took, and that's where you really look at child growth and development. This is looking at theories, right, and understanding development throughout all the different stages of that children go through. Then we have Child Development 208, which is looking at child, family, and community. And lastly, you have Child Development 111, which is looking at early childhood education and curriculum. So even though there's a lot of freedom within our early childhood field, there's also different types of curriculums that can be adopted depending on the school that you choose to work for. So CD 111 gives you really good perspective of understanding and just even taking a look at all those different curriculums, right? So this sample plan for example, for our school for 22-23 year school year, I'm sorry, is one way, right? But there's other ways, like I said earlier, that you can go ahead and get, become a teacher here. Does anybody have any questions about the core courses? No? So once you take these courses, they will provide the knowledge in terms of curriculum, hands-on experiences, so that you can thrive as a preschool teacher. And these classes will also integrate, like I said, theory and putting all of that into practice as you work with children. So as you grow into your field and into your profession, then, you'll learn a lot more. You'll take additional classes that continue to add to your tool bag. So let's go ahead and look at this one. So the 4 courses that I just mentioned to you, the core courses, those are the minimum requirements, basically for you to be a preschool teacher under the Title 22 Department of Social Services. Now, have any of you heard of this, Title 22 or Department of Social Services, or just having a license in a preschool? You can just give me a thumbs up. Okay, some of you have. And to some of you, this might be new. So what happens is when you say, I want to open a preschool, I want to start a new business venture, and I am going to have a preschool. The very first thing you have to do is obtain a license, and this is through the Department of Social Services. So an analyst comes out, they observe your facility, they take a look at it, make sure that you have all the minimum requirements, right, in order for them to give you a license. If you meet the requirements, they'll grant you a license, and through this license, you're able to serve and operate a preschool and serve children. So under this license, the minimum requirements, as I stated, are these core courses, and that basically allows you to become a teacher. So let's say you take all of these core courses in one semester because they're each 3 units. Then by next semester, ta-da, you're a teacher, right? And under Title 22, which is again, the entity that provides our license, there's no degree required for some schools, but that may vary from school to school. Other schools will either require an AA or higher, sometimes a master's. So it just really depends on the school that you are applying to. For example, here at Rio Hondo College Child Development Center, our teachers must have a teacher permit, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that entails, which basically means 24 units, 24 units in child development, 16 general education units, and experience. That's what we require here. So as you can see, that is a lot more than the minimum that's required. Now, if you go work for a different centers, different programs that have perhaps different funding, then there is some state or federally funded programs that will have higher requirements. So most of these programs will require, again, either an AA, a BA or higher, and they do require for teachers to have a permit. When I say permit, think of it as K through 12 teachers, they have credentials. Well, we have permits that are also given to us through the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, just like the K through 12 teachers. Any questions on this? No. All right.
Oh, excuse me. You know, when you said, when it comes to preschool teacher, you have to have an AA?
Say that one more time, Clifford, I'm sorry.
Oh, to become a preschool teacher, do you have to have your AA?
Not necessarily. It depends for the program or the school that you work for.
So you work for the lab school?
Yes, here on campus.
Or at UCLA, right?
No, I work at Cal State LA.
Oh, Kelsey, okay.
Yeah.
'Cause I know my wife used to work at UCLA, but because right now I do have my I have 60 units.
Okay.
I graduated with the certificate with the early ed, but I'm still taking for early childhood education, but I'm still taking some general classes,
Okay.
and I'm trying to figure out how can I get my permit.
Okay, there is this, so it sounds like you might be very close to qualifying, or you may qualify depending on your GEs that you've taken and your experience. So with that, there is going to be a second presentation, I'm sorry, that will go over all of these things. But if you like, I can talk to you more specifically at the end about potentially, I can give you the link on how to access the permit information, definitely.
Well, I'm at work today, but I was just listening.
Oh, no. Yeah, I can provide you my email, and then you can always email me and I can give you the link directly into basically the permit and everything else that comes with it. Mhm.
Okay, that'd be nice.
Clifford Felix, right? Okay, I'm writing your name down, Clifford.
Okay.
Mhm.
Hey,
All right.
my name is Lisa, and I already had my permit.
Yeah.
I stopped working as a child development teacher, but I don't know, what do I need to renew it?
So did it expire?
Yes, it did. 2000, I believe 17.
Okay, so I can also send you the link that it tells you exactly what you need to renew it. Because you wouldn't renew it at this point, you might have to start from scratch, but it just depends on
Yes.
the time frame. Yes, I can also give you
Oh.
that link. Lisa, your
Perfect.
last name? Sorry.
Torres Trujillo.
Torres Trujillo. Yeah, good questions. And
Thank
these
you.
are all for permit. Yeah, no problem. We'll talk a little bit more at the end. Oh no. Sorry, something else came up on my screen. Okay, let's move on. These are great questions. Okay, so really quick in a couple words, can you tell me, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm seeing something else. You can see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so what do you think a preschool teacher does? Really quick, just to get feedback and understanding. Anyone?
Well, I believe they support the children. They observe the children. You know, the preschool teachers plan, do lesson plans.
Yep.
Preschool teachers work with each other.
Yeah. Thank you, Clifford. Yeah, you got a lot of the keywords, right? We do definitely support growth and development. We work with other teachers. We do a lot of collaboration, not just with teachers, but also parents, right? The children, your peers, your administrators. And we do a lot of planning. There's a lot of planning. I know at times our field is mistaken by, oh, you just play with children. You just go and sit with them and have fun. But really, there's so much intentionality that happens in your planning so that you can support the growth and development in all the different developmental areas, right? Additionally, you know, you do become a counselor. There's all these hats. Sometimes we become janitors. You know, we become, you know, the advocates for these families. So there's such a big umbrella, right, that falls under what we do with our families and children. So I'm glad that you have a very good understanding of what that means. All right. So now that you've taken these core courses, congratulations, you're ready to work with children according to the minimum requirements, right? And this goes back to the permit, just to touch on a little bit. If you do complete those four core courses, that basically allows you to apply for a permit through the Child Development Permit Matrix. And because guess what, you don't need experience. So even if you just take 2 courses, you can apply for the assistant teacher permit. But again, if you want to go higher, you want to get more education and more experience so that you can continue to apply for higher permits. And I'm going to show you the matrix in just a little bit so that hopefully it makes more sense. The second thing on our agenda was experience and practicum. So how do we obtain this kind of experience? So there's 3 ways for you to obtain experience in our field. The first one is when you come to school, you take your core courses, you take additional courses, and then ultimately you end up taking a practicum class, which we do offer here on campus. And within that class, you are responsible to do 54 hours of field experience. And yes, I'm sorry, it's not paid, but you are getting hands-on experience working with children, and you also have a mentor teacher. For example, here on campus, we at our lab school mentor the practicum students that are here on campus, and they do complete about 54 hours every semester. That's one way, right? The other way is you can volunteer. You can actually, go into a center and ask if they're taking volunteers. You will need a Department of Justice clearance, fingerprint clearance. And then once that's all done and taken care of, depending on the center and the other criteria that you have to meet, then you can become a volunteer and that will work. And then there's also work experience, right? So for some centers, you can work as an assistant teacher or an aide without any experience, and that will gain, that'll be gained job experience that you can add to your resume later. So those are 3 possible ways to get some experience in the field. And here I'm going to show you the next thing on the agenda is the Child Development Permit Matrix. Again,
Hi,
this
Lupe.
is, oh,
Sorry,
hi.
we have Florecita who has a question.
Florecita, go for it. I'm sorry. Thank you, Emily.
Can you be clear on the option 2 and 3? When we have work experience and volunteering, it has to be in a ECE CD environment, not a regular K-12 environment, because I tried doing that to get the permit, but I was told that I cannot because I was not doing wasn't working in the ECE and CD environment. I was actually in the K-12 working with the kindergartens.
Yes, you're right. And this is why this little template here that we're going to go into next gives you all of that information. So anything to be considered, thank you, Florecita, does have to be with early childhood, right? So not K through 12, because that's what your focus would be, preschool. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So here on the matrix, I know it's kind of hard to see. I can give you the link too, so that you can look at it directly, print it out, carry this with you, become very familiar and comfortable with it, because this is how you become very much marketable in our field here in early childhood education. So at the very top, you notice that you start with basically an assistant permit, and that is you need no experience, very minimal classes, right? But I do want to focus on the 3rd level, which is the teacher option. On the left side of your screen here, you'll see the first option, which goes based on education and then experience, right? If you see the thicker line in the middle that divides it, then it gives you alternative qualifications. So the alternative qualifications are really important to become familiar with, because the more education you have, then the less experience you basically need. And I'll explain more what that looks like. So let's focus on the teacher one for sake of time, because again, once you have a teacher permit and you're at that level, it is much more easier for you to find a job. A lot of centers and schools are looking for, teachers. There is a shortage now, but we want teachers. We prefer teachers who have a permit, because those are the requirements that are being asked of us as centers. So let me give you that in a nutshell. Again, we're going to focus on the teacher level, and then here it is. For the first option, right, you need to have 24 child development units, including the core courses that we talked about. So those are very important. those 12 units plus an additional 12 units. That gives you 24 total CD units. In addition to that, you are required to have 16 general education units. That is very important. Don't just focus on getting your child development, but also your general education. And when we talk about GEs, we are actually talking about 4 different sections of this. So the 16 units would have to be within English and language arts, also math or science, social science, and humanities or fine arts. Once you have those 16 general education units, to become a teacher, you also need experience. And again, that is 175 days of experience within the last 4 years. And you have to do at least 3 hours within per day in those 175 days, if that makes a little bit of sense. So that's one option, right? Again, the more familiar you become with this matrix, the more it'll make sense and the more you can kind of, meet your goals as far as where you're trying to go as far as your education, because this permit is really, really important in our field here. The second option, let's say you don't want to look at option 1, but you want to look at the alternative qualifications. This would be it. Let's say you graduated from Rio Hondo College, you have your AA degree or higher, and now you also took the practicum class that is offered here on campus. Guess what? You automatically qualify for a teacher permit. See the big difference? AA degree, practicum class, then that automatically gives you, allows you to be able to apply for a teacher permit versus all of this, 24 units, 16 GEs, and experience. Do you see the difference? Does anybody have any questions about this? No?
And then Lupe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the associate degree has to be in early childhood or child development or something related, correct?
Related field, correct. And so when we go back to the matrix, thank you, Emily, for bringing that up. It's all on here, right? So that's why it's so important that you become familiar with this matrix, because this is your guide. This is basically your educational plan as far as the classes to take. Yes. Any questions? No? All right, we'll move on. So that's a little bit of the different routes you can take in order to become a teacher. My own personal tips, and these are tips that I share with my students often and also my staff, is when you are looking for a job, once you've done, your due diligence, you have your degrees, you have your units, you have your permits. I think one of the very important things to keep in mind is when you're looking for a school, find a school and a center that also matches your teaching philosophy, right? So, for example, for me, I believe in progressive education. I believe in project work and really allowing children to plan curriculum and have it be focused on that, which is also an emergent curriculum. So I always look for schools that have that philosophy of teaching, right? Because that's my personal philosophy. I strongly believe in a constructivist approach in children learning, by interactions, hands-on experiences. So for me, that's really, really critical versus me trying to fit into a curriculum that I don't believe in or a philosophy, if that makes sense. I think this is a really strong tip. When my students go into the workforce, I say, do your research. Look at the school that you're signing up to work at. Does it meet, your criteria of quality? Is it a quality program? Does it match your philosophy? These are all things to keep in mind as you're going into the field. And additional tips is, number one, I don't know that I've said it enough today, but please obtain a permit. You are so much more marketable. It's easier for you to have, open more doors for yourself. Also, obtain your CPR and first aid. Many positions, when you're applying, they will require this. Just as an example, all the positions here for teachers do require it, even my position when I first applied. The other part of this is have your immunization records up to date. A lot of centers, this is a licensing requirement. The people that give us the permission to open up our doors, we have to have immunizations on file for staff. So that's really important. And also start building your resume, right? Even if you get a little bit of experience and then you get more experience and you get your first job, build it, because you just never know when that opportunity will come knocking on your door. So these are things that I always keep in my forefront. And Lastly, I have this image of our children working here. Can you see what they're doing there? Anyone? Well, this is preschool children hard at work. So for me, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this is really highlighting the process of children learning through hands-on experiences. They were doing body exploration basically through pain and really use kinesthetically, right? Using their body to experience and feel the pain and really understand it through a different level. So at this point, I will answer. I know you have lots more questions, maybe specific questions. So I can definitely take time to answer that.